for our live event, the ASAE DELP Spotlight, Benefits, Application Tips, and Alumni Insights. My name is Ben Yzaguirre, and I'm the chair of the Association Latinos Professional Development Committee. Thank you all for joining us today. For those of you new to our events, Association Latinos is an online community whose mission is to advance Latino leadership and associations and partner with organizations to foster diversity and inclusion efforts. We work within our community and with our allies to advance Latino leadership, representation, and inclusion in associations. And if you have not done so already, we encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn as well as other social media platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. For convenience, links to each of those will be put in the chat now. And as I mentioned, today's event focuses on the Diversity Executive Leadership Program, otherwise known as DELP, offered through the American Society of Association Executives, or ASAE. By the end of today's discussion, we hope to provide you with an overview of DELP and help you determine if the program is right for you at this point in your career. In addition, we'll examine some various approaches to the application process and how to maximize your time as both a scholar and an alumni. So joining me today is a fantastic, and I mean fantastic, panel of both current and DELP scholars, and past DELP scholars, excuse me. Reading their list of individual accomplishments alone will take up an entire hour, so I encourage you to all connect with them and read more about their careers on LinkedIn. And links to each of their profiles to help facilitate that networking will also be pasted in the chat now. As I close out the housekeeping remarks, I lastly want to emphasize that today's event is meant to be a discussion. So please add your questions in the chat throughout the next hour. We'll get to as many chat-based questions as we can during the discussion, and we'll also have some time at the end for open Q&A to allow you to take yourself off mute if needed. So to start us off, I want to welcome Maunda Land to our discussion. For those of you who do not know her, Maunda is a DELP alumni, as well as a consultant with ASAE, working on the DELP program among many other efforts. Maunda, could you spend the next few minutes overviewing DELP, including its benefits, application process, and kind of the general timeline?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here with the Association Latinos group. I am a wonderful DELP scholar, 2013-2015, coming up on 10 years for our class, and just ecstatic to be a part of this wonderful community. So I first learned about DELP from a previous DELP scholar when I was in Michigan. I worked for a small association and had aspirations to grow my leadership development. And he said, you should consider applying for DELP. Through that connection, I applied. We're going to give you some tips for the application process. And thankfully, I transitioned to a new job in Florida, where I am now in Orlando, Florida, and applied for DELP and was able to get in and be part of the 2013 through 2015 class. And it's just been a wonderful experience. And I'm so honored to be able to work with ASAE as their conscious inclusion consultant, helping them execute their business strategy to advance organizations through conscious inclusion. And so part of that is this wonderful program called DELP, the Diversity Executive Leadership Program, that existed long before I was here. So it's been around for over 20 years. And ASAE has had a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility for over 20 years, or over 30 years actually, and this program birthed out of their efforts for that. So just a quick overview, DELP supports individuals from underrepresented identity groups to advance into ranks of leadership in association management profession. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I will put this caveat out there that everything that I'm going to say is actually on our website, and you can find more information about the DELP program, all of the application information, as well as get your apply for the program. And you can do that at asaecenter.org /DELP. And I will put that in the chat, as well as and share that with you at the end of my presentation. So it has been a proud, Visit Detroit has been a proud program sponsor of the DELP program for the past 20 years. So I want to make sure that I recognize the support of Detroit, and we'll talk about how they support the program a little bit later with things like the DELP reunion, which is one of the wonderful program benefits. So again, like I mentioned, the program began over 20 years ago with two main objectives. One, to increase leadership opportunities, access, and support for those in the underrepresented communities that are association professionals. And then the second is to cultivate a more diverse candidate pool. We recognize that we are not where we want to be when it comes to those C-suite positions within associations, and there are so many talented individuals that want to ascend within the association management profession. And DELP is a way to support those that are participants. I'm going to skip a little bit forward on my slides past this because I want to show you some of the commitments and benefits that you will get as a part of DELP. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of the application stuff a little bit later on. But one of the things that you will get as a part of being a DELP scholar is an ASAE membership. That this is, I don't even know if it's on here, but it's a great benefit because when I first was applying for DELP, I work for a small staff association, and we just couldn't afford to be an ASAE member. So it's access to being an ASAE member. Of course, you're going to go and be a participant in the DELP orientation and reunion. And part of this travel that DELP scholars will receive and have access to, the ASAE covers all of their travel costs, your accommodations, and your incidentals while you are a DELP scholar. So it's a very good benefit in recognizing that the support that is needed for scholars and those that are participants. And the next one is access and attendance to ASAE annual meetings. And I won't say just attendance because you are spotlighted. Those that are part of the DELP program can attest to being on the main stage, meeting the board members and other executives, and just really raising your visibility as a leader and aspiring association executive if you're not already one. Attendance at the volunteer leadership retreat, 2 educational programs. And I won't go over all of these, but some of them I have highlighted, and we'll talk a little bit about some program benefits. But we have wonderful things like online learning, the new program called Ready Me, which helps with your essential skills, and a boot camp that we're having, individual coaching, the connection and community that we have with the DELP family through the Collaborate page, as well as and the alumni that we have within the program. Over 200 alumni from all over the world are participants in DELP. And then active engagement with ASAE as volunteers. So you'll have access to knowing when volunteer opportunities come up, and you're encouraged to apply. You also have the wonderful benefit of having your exam fees waived if you're not already a certified association executive. And then you also get testing material for the exam. So, and you also, last but not least, this is one of the wonderful benefits. You have access to a mentor within the ASAE community, and those mentors have been past ASAE presidents, fellows from ASAE. And so you're able to expand your network and really get the support needed so you could achieve your growth and goals. So, like I said, all of that, and we can go through some of the key dates and the application and all of that, but I just want to tell you all of that is available online, and you can go to our website, asaecenter.org/DELP, and get all of the information there. Now we're going to go through some more of the details, so I won't go through those slides. I'll turn it back over to Ben, but I wanted to give you a very quick overview of the benefits and why this program is so special as being a part of DELP.
Thank you, Maunda. Yeah, it definitely is a very rich program that everybody that's on the panel today is taking advantage of all the benefits that are offered there. So I'm not going to invite the rest of our panelists to kind of go back in time and revisit and remember where they were professionally at the time of their DELP application or applications. Remember, this is a competitive program and it's not uncommon to apply multiple times. So to start us off, I want to ask if you can describe where you were in your career when you applied to DELP. What was the why for you and what were you hoping to achieve? Celia, if we can start with you, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. So I had been pretty new to associations. I had gotten in just really about 3 years ago, and I had my entire real career had been in education. So I was already about 15 something years into my career, but really relatively new to associations. And I realized that I loved associations and I really wanted to grow in it. But because I felt like I joined so late in the game, I really missed out on the opportunity to network and to meet mentors and to meet people like me who had broken through those glass ceilings to really be able to get me there. Because as much as I try to seek out mentors, it's really different coming from a Latina experience as a woman and a Latina. I was starting to kind of find different ways to find that mentorship, and I came across the DELP program. So I immediately applied, and of course I had absolute imposter syndrome, saying, well, you know, I'm really new at this. I don't know why they would ever choose me, but I'm going to try anyway, because what's the worst they can say? No. And I got in, and it has been a completely life-changing experience for me. So if you have any hesitations, don't listen to them, because the worst they can say is no. And then you just try again next year.
That imposter syndrome is real. Alex, what was your experience like?
Hi, Alex. I am in the 2022 class, and so we just graduated. But when I was similar to what Celia was saying, is that this imposter syndrome was really real for me. I was at an interesting point. I think we all have our own unique story, but I had been in associations for 20 years. But I was in an industry that wasn't necessarily supportive of ASAE involvement. And I hadn't been sponsored to go to events. I was, for the 20 years I was in associations, the only Latino in the office. And I didn't really have a concept of other people of color and immigrant populations that thought and looked like me, that were part of associations. Like I did not have that concept. So when I applied for DELP, I actually found it accidentally looking online to see what I was looking for resources. And I read on it and, you know, said, this actually is something I really need. And it was really part of the context of my application was, I don't have this like Celia was saying, what's what I'm looking for? I don't have this support system. I don't have these people that I know in this industry. And so while I had a pretty long career in associations before I got here, I didn't have any connections at all. And I think that that's where I thought DELP would be really beneficial for me. So I applied.
Thank you. And I'm seeing in the chat some discussion about the hesitations, the imposter syndrome, things of that nature. And I want to dive into that in a little more detail. So when you finally decided to apply to DELP, how did our panel get over that hump? What did you do to say, now is the time, I should go ahead and put my application forward? And Celia, do you want to talk about that in a little detail?
Sure, and I just realized that I didn't say my class. So I am the brand new class of 2022 through 2024. So I'm brand new to DELP still. I think one of the things that helped me is what also kind of got me through my doctorate. So I applied for my doctorate in linguistics midway through my career. And I kept kind of getting all the signals around me saying, oh, you're not good enough. Why are you going to try? It's so competitive. And what I did during that time, which also helped me with DELP, was imagine myself 5 to 10 years after I got it, and really imagining myself, well, okay, so what could I do to be able to get there? Like, what are the things that would make me stand out? And I really looked at the application and I just wrote bullet points of all the things that I've ever done that would make me a good DELP alum. So what would I bring to DELP to show that I could help DELP grow in the future? So I didn't only focus on why I want to be in DELP, but how I could help DELP in the future. And so then I talked about, well, I have helped my community in XYZ. I have done this, I have done that. I'm the first in my family to do this. I can bring connections with people. I can do this. And I really spent the entire time showing DELP why I would be a good alum. And I think that that was something that really helped me to also make myself believe that I could do this, because I bring so much and I bring a different perspective. And I feel that every single DELP classmate that I've met brings such different perspectives that not one of us has the same story or the same journey. And that's what makes our class so unique and that mentorship so powerful.
Thank you. And Juan, I see a comment in the chat from you about putting your nerves and your reasons on paper to help. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I love that comment because I think you need to know that we all been through this process and it's nerve-wracking. It's like, you know, you want to get chosen and you don't want to receive rejection, but part of applying means you just got to get over that. You have got to put your best foot forward. And so I have to tell you that my story is like, I passed up DELP 2 years in a row. I had a colleague, Valerie Clark, who was a DELP alumni already, and she kept putting the application in front of me. First year, I was like, I'm not interested. Second year, I was like, no, go ahead, go away. And the third year, she locked me up in her office and she said, you need to do this. So point number one is like, sometimes you do need other individuals to encourage you because they see that potential in you. And so the fact that you're on this webinar participating, I think goes well for you, that you're probably above someone else who's going to apply and not receive all this wealth of information. But, you know, just write things down. Just what makes you you? You know, why are you nervous? Who can you talk to about getting over that anxiousness of applying? You know, look at right now the network that's online right here at this webinar. Put your nervousness or your questions in the chat because we're here to help you. And I think that once you get over that, you'll be at a better position to apply.
It's funny you mentioned 3 times kind of going to it, because in preparing for this event, I looked back at the DELP application questions. And ASAE saves all your previous applications. I opened it up twice in 2018 and 2019 myself and didn't finish it. And then 2020 is when I actually went through with it. But we're going to move on now. So let's talk about the application process and the application itself in a little more detail. And Maunda, I'm going to ask you to come back on board for a second and give us an overview of the types of questions and the documentation required in the DELP application. And if you can, how the applications are reviewed as well.
Yes, so we'll go back to the presentation. Sorry, I should have went back to my slides here. So sorry to go back here, but let's talk a little bit about who's eligible to apply for DELP. And again, you can see this right on the website. So you must be a member of a racial or ethnic group, minority group, and you can see those listed there. And you must be currently employed full-time as a mid-senior level association executive. You need to have that full, I get this question every single day, full-time current employment, not volunteerism. So that's very important to note there. You also need a minimum of 3 years experience, or if you're a CEO of an association, 1 year, and then demonstrated professional, volunteer, civic, community engagement and experience, and then be fully committed to the program benefits, which I just previously went over. So what do you need to apply for the DELP program? You're going to need your current resume. You're also going to need a recent photo, which is a headshot. So not just any random photo, you will need a professional headshot. And there's more details on the website of each of these if you have questions. You'll also need a short bio of yourself that will be posted. If you go to the DELP pages, you can see a bio of each a scholar. So that will be posted out on the web pages. And then you'll need 2 letters of recommendations from your immediate supervisor or CEO. CEO is always preferred. And then a colleague in the association community, your board member, your chair, committee chair, ASAE member, industry leader, etc. There's more detail on what those letters of recommendation include. And I've listed highlights of what those letter recommendations should touch on. There's more detail again on the website, but they want your letter of recommendation to highlight your leadership, how you're a change agent or innovator, how you're demonstrating community service, how you're giving back to the profession, and discussing your skills and readiness to engage in the scholar experience. So you just want someone that knows you if you're going to have a letter of recommendation, because we're asking why you should be a participant and a scholar in the DELP program. And they need to give concrete examples of how you're going to contribute in and outside of the organization, what you've done, and then how you're going to engage once you're a DELP scholar as well. So additionally, within the application, there are, and Ben said you can go and look at this online, there are 3 500-word personal statements that have to be submitted with every application. Again, these questions are just brief here, but you can look at them in detail on the application itself. Why are you applying for DELP? Why are you a change agent or innovator? And what's your leadership philosophy? So as you go through the application, you'll want to make sure that you work on these personal statements and these essays as well. And I think that is it for the yep, that's it for the application itself. There's some other just general questions about your organization, your ethnicity, your race, and other things like that that are easy to fill out. But those are the main things that you will need to complete for the application. And I must say, applications are already open. They're open right now, and they will close on March 10th at 11:59 p.m., which you have enough time to get an application, a very good application in between now and then.
Great. Thank you, Maunda. And I see in the chat, some people are already preempting my next question about getting assistance for the application process. So let's think through this right now. You've overcome the hump of imposter syndrome. You're actually sitting down to write your application. From the people on our panel, did you seek any external assistance or advice when preparing your application? Diana, let's start with you.
Thanks, Ben. So good evening, everyone. I'm Diana Dabdub, and I am the DELP class of 2009-2011. So I'll share that I actually completed the DELP application 3 times. And my story is a little bit interesting because back in 2007, when I originally applied, you actually had to mail in an application to ASAE headquarters. And my application just never made it to ASAE. Like, it just didn't get there. I went through the whole process and didn't get evaluated. And so it was my colleague and I, and who's a really good friend now, Erica Ochoa, who's also a DELP scholar. We applied at the same time. She did get in, which was fantastic, because then I had somebody that I could go to and kind of learn from her experience of what she was going through in DELP. And so the next year I reapplied, I put my application together, I sent it in, and I didn't get in. And so I was like, okay, I really want this. I've done this twice. Let's see, 3rd time's a charm. So I really went back and I decided to get some feedback from the chair of the DEI committee on my application and really find out what I could do to make my application stronger. And then also I had the benefit of now having a DELP alumni scholar that I could reach out to and ask for a letter of recommendation. And so I feel that even though it took me 3 times, it was really in my benefit to have had that time of reflection and figuring out also how I could go back and look at my responses to the questions and be very specific. And again, going back to like, what could I give back to the association community, to DELP? And also just knowing that I now had somebody to go to, right? My really good friend and colleague that I could lean on. And so I really had, I think at that point, a lot of support. And so it was a really good time for me to, again, kind of that self-reflection that you do after you don't get something is really important too. So I would say definitely don't give up hope. It took me 3 times to actually apply, but it's something that I really wanted. And I do feel that the timing couldn't have been better for when I actually did get this, opportunity to be a DELP scholar. So my advice would be to seek out, others, either people to review your responses to those questions, to the essay questions. And if you do have access to a DELP scholar, and you do now, because now you know all of us, to reach out. And I think anybody would be happy to review, your application with you. And I've done that for somebody that I didn't even know, I was connected with somebody who was interested in applying a few years ago. We connected, me and my other colleague, and just really kind of coach that person on what they could do better in their application. And that's really what it takes. A lot of it is that network in the community. And now you do have people that you can go to. So I would say reach out to us and let us be your support in your application process, because we do want to see more representation, especially from our Latino Association executives in the DELP program.
Yeah, so just to make that abundantly clear, there are so many people on the call today. If you're thinking about applying to DELP, that will help you. So please reach out. Please let us know if you have any questions or you just want some feedback. But in addition to the essays, there's 3 questions that Maunda laid out. The letters of support are particularly important. And sometimes you get so focused on writing your essays that you forget about that aspect sometimes, or at least in my case, that's how it was. I want to ask our panelists, how did you approach reaching out to get the best letters of support from those 2 folks that you needed? And Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah, I've 2 things about that. First, I want to iterate that before I chose who I wanted to be to recommend me, I really spent a lot of time figuring out what I actually was going to be the content of my essays. I really felt that it was important to have it be thematic, right? I wanted to be able to say, I really want this, and have the people that were recommended me saying, he keeps talking about how much he really wants this. So that level of consistency, I can't stress enough, was really important. I think being very authentic about what I was going to write helped me be really honest when I asked for my recommendations, to say, this is what the program is. This is what I'm looking for out of the program. And I had very meaningful conversations with the 2 people that gave me recommendations. One was a direct supervisor, and one was a previous CEO that I worked with. Both were very supportive, but I really wanted to make sure that I threaded through that sort of same message through my essays, which I really labored over and really worked really hard on. And I can't stress that enough, that they're not 500 letter flippant essays. These are really important, that the CAE selection committee, the DELP selection committee really looks at meaningfully. And so that was, the people that recommend you really need to know your why, so that they can speak to that as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Juan, I want to turn to you now for the last question of this segment. And for those of you that don't know Juan, he's had quite the past 12 months or so, moving into the executive director role, getting a lot of awards from ASAE. And it can be, for the rest of us on the call that see his career and his trajectory, you can kind of forget that he had to start somewhere too, right? He's part of the DELP program and applying to it. So if you can think back, Juan, to that point in your life, what was the most challenging aspect of applying to DELP from your point of view, the application process?
Wow, Ben, on the spot, but so let me share that, first of all, I am the class of 2012, 2014, and each class is different, but we call each other the best class ever. And so with that, my colleagues will argue, but with that, I will tell you, getting used to being uncomfortable. I mean, I was really good at working behind the scenes. So I worked with volunteers and you just didn't see me on stage. I was behind the scenes all the time. And I didn't present because I wanted to support other colleagues who were presenting. So I was very good at like, okay, let's practice. I was also very good at just connecting with people and particularly within my community. And applying to DELP meant that I had to get uncomfortable. And that meant like on day one, when I went to ASAE headquarters and met 11 other individuals, I was the quietest one. And back then, our manager was Mary Lou, and she said, I can tell that you are going to be the one that I'm going to have to take care of most of because you're so quiet. And when she said that, I was like, why? Well, why did I apply? You know, and I changed that like it was 3 to 6 months into the program. I knew I had to change that that narrative. And so I did become very outspoken. I was like, okay, why did I apply? I have to share what I know, whether it's through the association industry, whether it's connecting through the community, whether it's helping someone else. You know, what am I going to get out of this? And my second point is like, what I really wanted to do is really look at exceptional leaders. And so it was important for me to really get uncomfortable with approaching the ASAE chair, the ASAE board members, the foundation chair, just to talk to them. And I realized I was like, these are just people, like, and they're happy to help out. They're happy to either say, how can I help you? What can I guide you with? Happy to give you any advice. And then the third thing was just looking within the community. I think most of us have already said it and can't continue to stress that enough. You're going through the application process, reach out to the community. It's like we put in the chat, the DELP alumni page, you know, look to see who you know, who you don't know. You know, part of you reaching out is when you develop your resume, when you develop your essays, your photos. What you want to do is look at your application. And so I'll give you an example. If you don't have a professional picture, please do not submit a picture where you were at the bar or at the the party and you crop it, because the slightest little things will, the committee of reviewers pay attention to that. So I'm one of those. I'm looking for a leader. And so when I see a crop picture of, party, there's nothing wrong with that, but this is not the time or the place. You're really putting your best effort forward. And even the resume, it's like, everyone's going to have a resume. So how fancy do you want to be? That's in creative, that's great. But what I'm looking for, as mentioned before, is like the leadership attributes. What numbers? Quantify those. What are the outcomes? What makes you you and uniqueness? And then the last thing I will say in terms of just this experience is like, don't be afraid of going for it and losing sleep, perhaps, but you have a lot of support.
Thank you for that. And before we go kind of onto our next segment of being in the program, I want to share one thing from my point of view for the application process that I thought was interesting, and it goes along with the fear of that imposter syndrome of just not putting yourself out there. One of the things that I highlighted personally in my application was my failures and how I learned from them and how I grew and my approach to tackling them in the future. So for anybody on the call thinking about applying, don't shy away from those. Everything is a learning experience. If you can incorporate it into where you're going and the theme of your career arc, please do include it. I think it helps make a stronger application, at least from my point of view. So we've talked about the application.
I'm sorry, Ben. Can I say something to that? I think that what you said is really important. I said about the application itself. I think that talking about, these are the things I failed at, or these are the things that I'm really self-conscious about and why DELP can be helpful to me. Tying your application, your DELP experience to those things are going to be really important to making your application stand out. So I think if you're looking to an application, say how great you are and how great things are and how, you don't, we all have really great things we can talk about, but I think this is a really good time to talk about how your DELP experience can help enhance your career, can help you step into spaces where you have not yet been and want to be, right? So that stretching forward, one of the things that I said in my application was that when I had a problem or had issues, like I didn't have any diverse voices that I could go talk to because I didn't have that that network. And so I kind of felt like I was in an echo chamber in this little white world where I really wanted more perspective. So I wrote about that, and I felt like I didn't think that that was necessarily a bad thing. It was just something that I wanted to sort of reach beyond where I'm at. So that's what I wrote about. Now, that was a little bit tricky to tell the people that recommended me that I was in a little white world echo chamber. I didn't go that far, but I sort of contextualized it all, right? It's all about how approaching that professionally. But I think that leaning into those things that you want to strengthen with DELP is the way to set yourself apart when you apply. So talking about weaknesses or talking about your failures is totally what I do recommend you do, like Ben says he did, and like I did, but contextualize them into how the DELP experience is going to help reinforce those things for you.
That's good. Ben, before we head on to the next topic, Carol had a question about the application that I'm happy to address. She mentioned, you mentioned a very good application is meeting the listed criteria, an indicator of a good application. And I'm just going to address your overall question as what I tell everyone when they send in question email. I tell them to, if you have a 500-word essay, it's probably best not to be verbose, but to come up with answers that is completing your 500 words. So don't say too little and don't say too much, but be able to use all of your word count. If you have 300 words that are for recommendation, are you going to be dinged if your application or your letter of recommendation is 700 words? Well, perhaps you need to abide by the criteria in the application and understand that this is a very competitive application process. There are usually anywhere from 80, 70, 80 to 100 applications for 12 slots. So please know that this is very competitive and you need to abide by the criteria that is outlined for each item on the application as best as you can, so that you can make sure your application is the strongest it can be.
Perfect. Thank you all. And Maunda, we're going to stick with you for a second and talk about being in the program itself, and in just a few minutes being an alumni as well. But before we get into that, can you go over just the general sequence of events for the 2 years that scholars are in the program?
Yes. So one of the program benefits, and that's this timeline slide. Let me pull this up here really quickly. Sorry, it's not moving forward. There we go. Okay, so the application deadline is March 10th. When you look at the application, there will be an outline of the dates in which all of the scholars will need to participate. Those are not flexible. I had someone actually email and say, well, I can't make the annual meeting, can I still apply? If you're not able to make these dates and attend the annual meeting, we encourage you to apply in the subsequent year when you can make all of the information, because as a scholar, we want you to be at every event, and that's part of your scholar commitment. So you will get notification once the applications do close on March 10th. We'll do the deliberation. We're looking to notify the scholars in beginning of May. There is a DELP orientation that will be held at ASAE headquarters. That will be June 6th through the 8th. So you will need to make preparations for that. If you're in DC, your time won't be as long being away from the office. But if you're in California, California, you will need to get to DC, and we have a schedule of events that will happen during that time. Every year we have a DELP reunion, and that is where all of the DELP classes are able to come back to the city of Detroit, which is our program sponsor. And as a DELP scholar, you will need to be there for this DELP reunion as well as the subsequent DELP reunion. But this one coming up is June 23rd through the 25th in Detroit, Michigan. Additionally, the annual meetings that are for DELP scholars where you're highlighted, as well as once you complete your scholar years, you will get a certificate. And we have a wonderful DELP breakfast where we highlight you as well. So that will be August 5th through the 8th in Atlanta, Georgia. That's 2023. And then next year, August 10th through the 13th, 2024 in Cleveland, Ohio. The other program benefits, such as your in-person events that you choose, you have the option to choose whichever one meets your schedule. So some people go to MMCC, or they may go to Executive Leadership Forum, they may go to Tech Conference, whatever you choose, which meets your schedule, that is up to you. So those are the main program benefits that program requirements that you need to be at. And then other than that, you will need to have your schedule and make it work for your schedule. But you do get the opportunity every year to attend a conference or an event as a program scholar, an additional conference every event as a program scholar.
Perfect, thank you. So we're going to talk about being in the program now for just a few moments, and to our panelists, I'm going to combine a few questions for the sake of time, so pardon me. But I want to talk about getting that initial acceptance letter and your class itself. What was unique about it? What was the series of events for you when you initially got into the program? And Diana, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I mentioned that I thought it was the right time of when I actually did get accepted into the program, and it was. I was the first cohort of a class of 12 people, and also the first two-year program. And so I think that was a really fantastic thing that ASAE did in terms of expanding the program to 2 years and being able to continue to support and nurture those DELP scholars. And so for me, it was not only the being ecstatic about receiving this honor to be part of this program, but the fact that now it was 2 years and it was much more robust than it had been in the past. That was just even more than what I had expected originally. Our first class of the 12 scholars, I think they were very intentional about who was selected in terms of the makeup of the group. And I think that was kind of at that point, maybe a refresher of what the DELP program was, wanting to make some changes there at that point in time. And so there was really great representation from different areas of the association profession, and then also a good balance of just, people from different states regionally. I think they were just very, very intentional about where they selected scholars from. And so for me, that was just a great opportunity to be part of a new kind of, I guess, a new resurgence of what DELP was going to be for the future. And I think the two-year program is where, it's a really great opportunity to be able to do some of the things that, I think a one-year program was a very, it was very ambitious for those scholars to do. So that was just kind of my experience in being able to be one of that first class of the two-year program. So I'm glad that that's something that continues to this point in time now. So it's 14 years later, right, that we still have this wonderful program for 2 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll turn to Alex now. Alex and I were in the same class, and our applications were due the weekend that everything shut down with COVID. So we certainly had a unique experience.
We are not the pandemic class. We are dope DELPers, and we will not be known as the pandemic class. We are dope. That's who we are. I have a very interesting story, and I actually got my first information or communication from DELP Mary Lou at the time that I did not get in. And I thought, oh, I was so distraught. I was distraught. I really was. And then I got a call that said, hey, Alex, I actually got the wrong note, I guess. And Actually, I didn't get the wrong note. There was someone had to bow out for personal reasons, and they called me and said if I was still interested. This is actually really important, is that I was so disappointed. And I think, and I'm really grateful that I handled it, the disappointment that I felt professionally. Thank you for letting me know. I will apply next time. And I was very, very fortunate to get the call and say, hey, would you like to join the class? So glad that I did. But even if it's a no, it might eventually be a yes. I think there's a lot to be said about just who we are as DELPers and who we are and how we are with each other. And I just think there's this sort of, I just think this is such a great group to be with and be around, and handling those, even if it's a decline at first, handling it gracefully and handling it well is really key, because as Maunda said, this is very competitive, and it is a lot of people have to apply more than once. So when I got the second call, I might have run a lap around the office. I might have done that. I was very, very excited. I had very little time to get my updated headshot, and there's a lot that to submit, and but I did it because this was easily the best thing that happened for me and in my career. And then having it be in 2020, I was really glad to have my cohort that we went through it together, for sure.
There's definitely a lot of bonding that goes on in any class, but yes, especially with ours.
Yes.
So Celia, what about you? You have the freshest perspective as a current scholar right now. What's going on with your class?
So not to overshadow Alex's class, but we were the first class back from COVID. So that reunion was incredible. I think that everyone really tried to come. So we really got to see, I mean, the entire class just be so ecstatic to come back in person. And we found out that our previous classes were really advocating for us to have a very different DELP experience. So we're the ones that really aren't getting the fruits of all of their labor, which just really shows how DELP is always there to support each other and to support the future classes, including, for example, the addition of having Maunda on our team. So we're very excited for that. When I found out that I got the acceptance, I was actually walking to my husband's job, and I dropped my phone from how excited it was, because it was like at 5 p.m. I was not expecting that to come in on a Friday at 5 p.m., but it did. So I was just very shocked, and I immediately texted my husband and I emailed my boss, and it was just exclamation points everywhere. And then I realized, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent him an email with so many exclamation points, but that's how excited I was. I didn't even review my email. Our class is just absolutely amazing. For example, I know Josie is on this call and she's in my class, and we just have like so many different perspectives. We have executive directors currently. We have people aiming for the executive directorship. A lot of us are right now in study groups to take the CAE, because we want to all finally be that class that has the CAEs all together. So we've really leaned on each other for a lot of things. We have a monthly kind of DELP meetup call where we really talk to each other and help each other out with our issues that we're currently having at work, and really lifting each other up and sharing job announcements. So it's just really been an amazing experience to have people like you to commiserate with, to share successes with, and really just to have such a great time with, because Detroit was incredible. I really just have absolutely not enough time to talk about how amazing DELP and my classes.
Thank you so much. So before we move on to kind of being an alumni, I want to ask one more question on this topic. And Juan, I'll shoot this over to you. What advice do you have for future scholars to maximize their time in the program?
So you heard the saying, I think it is like you get what you put in. And for me, I think I've seen enough DELP classes to know that that is so true. From the moment you get that letter to the 2-year scholarship that you receive, it's an amazing journey, but it doesn't end there. And so part of that means is you have to be very strategic in those 2 years. And so you have to work with your leadership to say, okay, on the 3rd year, do you continue supporting my commitment to the association industry through ASAE membership or through DELP, more time away from the office? Or is it volunteering on committees? Is it going to a study group for your CAE? It's just 2 years go by really quick. And so the other point I'll make, whoever you end up with as a mentor, I think it's key for you to take a position or think about that individual is going to help you, but what are you going to do to help that individual? So it's not a one-way street, because that mentorship program and your mentor, it just doesn't end unless you want it to. But most of us, I can share that most of us look to our mentors and say, I know we've been out the program for several years, but now we're colleagues, we're friends, we reach out, And then the other third point I'll make is that there will be times when you have to spend your own money. So if you don't have a professional headshot, it's an investment on yourself. It's like, will you pay that $200-300, or will you spend it on, a resume writer, or will you spend it somewhere going to a conference that DELP scholarship will not cover? It is that you're going to donate. Part of this experience is that, it's not a written rule, but whatever you get, you have to give back to the community. And so part of that means is, do you give back to the ASAE Research Foundation? Do you donate as DELP scholars? We do have campaigns that say contribute as a DELP scholar, and then the last thing I'll say is that the benefits will outweigh any imposter syndrome that you're having right now. Many of us will probably share at least one story that changed our lives. And for me, I will tell you that it has been giving back to my community. So I identify as Latino. And so from the moment I got into DELP, that's been my mission. I was just like, I need more Latinos, Latinas, Latinx, Hispanics, more of us in DELP, in ASAE, in the association industry. So know why you're applying.
Excellent, thank you. So now we're going to move into our last segment, just spend a few minutes on being an alumni. And we've already touched on a lot of different points of being an alumni and giving back to the community and helping out the future scholars as well as the current scholars. But I want to ask Maunda, from ASAE's perspective, what do they do to help support the alumni network and foster community?
Thank you, Ben. As an alumni of DELP, ASAE still is committed to your growth and development. And part of that will come through when you're a DELP scholar and you see the power of the DELP community. There will always be opportunities for volunteerism to give back, to support ASAE and the association profession. And part of being a DELP scholar is really doing that. And then as ASAE, the goal is for us to highlight those opportunities. Sometimes you don't apply or you don't know about an opportunity, so you're not able to participate. And so for being a part of the DELP scholar and being a part of the DELP family, you find out about when applications for committees are. You find out about when award applications are and nominations, and you're building that network of people that can support you and putting those nominations together. So as a member of DELP and as a DELP alumni, I think part of the ask, like Juan said, is to give back to the profession and give back to ASAE. It not only helps, everyone knows it's always better to give than to receive it. And so we always encourage people to give back. And part of being a member of the alumni community is having that network and knowing about those opportunities. And then also having the support there. Most of the time when you're volunteering, there's other DELP on committees and in opportunities, and can help foster you and help you get to, if you aspire for leadership position, they can help you within that and in your volunteerism as well. So I think those are some of the things that ASAE does to support that as well. And the exposure, let me say this one before we go, the exposure to the ASAE leadership retreat. I mentioned that really briefly as a program benefit, but that is an opportunity for you as a scholar in your second year to be with all of the committee chairs and the ASAE board and talking about the strategy for ASAE and getting your input as a DELP scholar. I can't say enough about how invaluable that experience is. And so by being a DELP scholar, I really encourage you to participate in those precious, prestigious moments that you will have access to.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm going to just pose it out there to any of our panelists. If you can talk about how you've leaned on the alumni network, how you've leaned into the group that you've grown to know through DELP. Is anybody that would like to jump in there?
I will say I did not know how everywhere DELPers are. I did not know when I started, but every committee that I've been on, DELPers. Every time I've needed anything, I'll just ask a DELPer, and I've got like 5 different communications from people. This is just an amazing group. So one of the things that I found very helpful about the program was its support of us getting our CAE, and I could not have done it without the support of the DELP program, but also DELPers that helped with studying and all of it. Has just been really amazing to just, I'll walk into a conference and it's like, hey, Alex, and I'm like, I have to remember that when people know me, and I was just like really shocked by that. I was just 3 years ago, I was trying to get out of this echo chamber, and now it's taken in really short order. It really has, I think, given me the exposure. And I was director at one organization. I'm currently the regional exec and I think that career trajectory had a lot to do with the confidence and exposure and opportunities I got through the DELP program.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I was just reflecting on that myself. Putting together a webinar in 2 weeks' time, 3 years ago, I would never have been able to do that, but I just went through my little inbox and Rolodex and reached out to all of you all, and you jumped on board. So it is definitely a benefit of being a DELP scholar. It looks like we're coming to the top of the hour now, so we're not going to be able to get to any more questions, but I want to make it very clear to anybody on the call, if you have questions, everybody here is willing to help. Go to that alumni page on ASAE's website, reach out to others as well. I'm sure they will be willing to help. Connect with us on LinkedIn, send us an email, whatever it is. We are all willing and able to help you with your application. So I do hope that you all apply, and if you need anything else, just please let us know. I also want to extend a sincere thank you to my colleagues on the panel today for donating their time. Juan, Celia, Diana, Alex, and Maunda, thank you very much. And I also want to extend a note of gratitude to the Board of Association Latinos for their vision and leadership in bringing this organization together. Josie, Jay, Carlos, Norma, and Jose, thank you for creating this platform. And for everyone on the call, please be on the lookout for future Association Latino events. We'll be hosting professional development discussions throughout the year, and you can find those announcements on your favorite social media platform. So this concludes our session today. I'll stick around for a minute if anybody has any one-on-one questions, but our panelists, you are free to go unless you'd like to stick around as well. Thank you all.